Gopi Jana Balava Giri Baradhari Gopi Jana Balava Giri Baradhari Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jayam Vishnupad Paramahangsa Parivrajakcharya Stadasasi Samad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki Shri Giri Govardhan Ki Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Sankirtan Yagya Ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 1, Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu, Text 6. Tam Kamayanam Bhagavan Uvaha Yajusham Pati Tushtayam Tosham Apano Janayad Dwadashatmajan Tam Kamayanam Bhagavan Uvaha Yajushampati Tushtayam Tosham Apano Janaya Dwadashatmajan Tam Kamayanam Bhagavan Uvaha Yajushampati Tushtayam Tosham Apano Janaya Dwadashatmajan Tam Kamayanam Bhagavan Uvaha Yajushampati Tushtayam Tosham Apano Janaya Dwadashatmajan Tosham Apano Shatmajan I'm sorry, go ahead. Tam her Kamayanam desiring Bhagavan the Lord Uvaha married Yajusham of all sacrifices Pati master Tushtayam in his wife who was very much pleased Tosham great pleasure Apana having obtained Ajanayat gave birth Dwadasha 12 Atmajan sons. Translation: the Lord of all ritualistic performance of yajna later married Dakshina, who was anxious to have the personality of Godhead as her husband. And in this wife, the Lord was also very much pleased to beget 12 children. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. An ideal husband and wife are generally called Lakshmi Narayan, to compare them to the Lord and the goddess of fortune, for it is significant that Lakshmi Narayan are forever happy as husband and wife. A wife should always remain satisfied with her husband, and a husband should always remain satisfied with his wife. In the Chanakya Shloka, the moral instructions of Chanakya Pandit, it is said that if a husband and wife are always satisfied with one another, then the goddess of fortune automatically comes. In other words, where there is no disagreement between husband and wife, all material opulence is present and good children are born. Generally, according to Vedic civilization, the wife is trained to be satisfied in all conditions, and the husband, according to Vedic instruction, is required to please the wife with sufficient food, ornaments, and clothing. Then, if they're satisfied with their mutual dealings, good children are born. In this way, the entire world can become peaceful. But, unfortunately, in this age of Kali, there are no ideal husbands and wives. Therefore, unwanted children are produced. And there's no peace and prosperity in the present-day world. Now, that's a pretty powerful purport for, certain devotees. Tam kamayanam bhagavan uvaha yajisham pati tushtayam tosham apano janayad dwadashatmajan. The Lord of the ritualistic performance of yajna later married Dakshina, who was anxious to have the personality of Godhead as her husband. And in this wife, the Lord was also very much pleased to beget 12 children. Nama Om Vishnupada Krishna Presta Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasachachadesha Tarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha kripa sindubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Well, the first thing which occurred to me a couple of verses before, was that Akuti, the daughter of Swambhuva Manu, one of the daughters, and Ruchi, the great sage, Prajapati, so they gave birth, probably they gave birth to more than just those first two children mentioned, because he's a Prajapati. And the Prajapatis, they normally produced many children, even of all sorts, even different species. But the first thing that occurred to me was that these two, a brother and sister, they're twin brother and sister, and for, marriage, etc., to occur between brother and sister, in any civilized society, it's just doesn't happen. Well, marriage as such really doesn't happen. So I thought, I looked through these verses and I thought, gosh, what will people think? But the thing is, then it just struck me that the point really in that respect is that they are husband and wife who sort of circumstantially appeared as twin brother and sister. That's actually the situation. It's not like they are twin brother and sister and they just happen to get married. They're husband and wife eternally. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Goddess of Fortune, they're eternal husband and wife. And Prabhupada refers to that in the purport. So they're husband and wife, but in the course of the Lord's pastimes here, they were to appear, they did appear, apparently as brother and sister, but actually the relationship is their husband and wife. And the brother and sister part is just some sort of, well, you could say circumstantial factor in the situation, and not to be looked at, from the other point of view, where, at least in civilized cultures, to my knowledge, such a thing, even marriage between like first cousins, where the parents are brother and, directly related, that is generally, I think, frowned upon, isn't it? It may happen sometimes, but when it does, it would normally appear in the newspaper, something like that. It's just a bit of a sort of, well, oh, I see, type of situation. So anyway, that's an important point. Otherwise we might get, so there's some confusion could easily be there. But the point that Srila Prabhupada focuses on in the purport is that Dakshina, the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa, she was anxious to have the Lord as a husband. And it's not that there were so many the Lord was appearing, in so many different forms at that time. It was special appearance of the Lord. And she was anxious to have him as her husband. And obviously, she was not seeing him as a brother. And then when they were married, the Lord was very pleased with her. And as Prabhupada says, they were both very pleased with each other as a married couple. And because they're Lakshmi Narayan. She's a partial expansion, but she's still an expansion. So, she's not quite the same as Lakshmi Devi, Mahalakshmi in person, but she's basically the same. And Lakshmi Narayan, as Prabhupada says, they're forever happy as husband and wife. I think, I don't know, I've been to a number of weddings over the years, and is it that in some they get a blessing to be as happy as Lakshmi and Narayan? Not really, not exactly. But there's reference to Lakshmi and Narayan. Yeah, there's reference at least. Because Lakshmi and Narayan are the ideal husband and wife. As Prabhupada points out here, that people, that Lakshmi Devi particularly is a very popular, you could say, in a certain context, demigoddess, as the goddess of fortune who dispenses opulences of different types to worshippers. But Srila Prabhupada pointed out clearly that another name of Lakshmi Devi in that context is Chanchala, which literally means flickering. She can't focus her attention. Her attention just gets diverted so easily. In this context, from worshipper to worshipper, and then another worshipper, and then another worshipper. And so the first worshipper, of course, such a male, if we say such a man, really wants to get, he would like to get the ongoing mercy of Lakshmi Devi, an ongoing supply of opulence, of wealth. And so he worships her, and the first time he gets wealth, and he thinks, oh, very good. Can someone take this? I should have just switched the thing off completely. Give it to, oh, okay. I'm sorry, everyone out there in Facebook land. Yeah, right. But the second time, she may do the same puja, and just the program of worship might be precisely the same, but nothing comes. Yes. We used to have, well, I don't know, maybe we still do in England, a life member who was a very strong supporter and donor, and a wealthy man, a very wealthy man. His name was Charles Patel. He was the first Indian person I ever met with an English name until I came to South Africa. And I remember we did at Bhaktivedanta Manor some sort of, you could say, recognition of when the day of Lakshmi Puja came, which is around Diwali time, something. And I remember that, and he was involved in organizing whatever it was. It wasn't like a real program, but it wasn't nothing. It was something. And some people came. And he told me, yes, Lakshmi Puja, I'm, on this day I worship Radha Gokulananda in Bhaktivedanta Manor. And he told me in a sort of knowing way, he leant over and he said, it works. It was quite interesting experience, which one of those few things that stuck in my mind over the years. But anyway, Lakshmi Narayan, people worship Lakshmi generally more than Narayan, and definitely they worship Lakshmi more than they worship Lakshmi Narayan. But Srila Prabhupada made the point that if you want mercy from Lakshmi, you really need to worship her with Narayan. Otherwise, Lakshmi, as is pointed out here, well, they're forever happy as husband and wife, or they're the ideal married couple. They're just the ideal couple. And in any marriage, if the wife is being approached by different men for, some, I don't know, favors or for something, then the husband's not going to be happy, and the wife won't be happy. So it's a very interesting situation in different ways. But particularly Prabhupada focuses on this point of, it's sort of, you could say, like a type of a formula for happy or successful, or happy and successful marriage, that the wife should always remain satisfied with the husband, and the husband should always remain satisfied with his wife. So it's equal, completely equal like that. And as Prabhupada also points out, unfortunately in this age of Kali, there are no ideal husbands and wives. Hare Krishna. Well, that's true. And even, of course, some husbands and some wives are just, lacking in qualification, shall we say, just in terms of being nice to each other, just in simple terms like that, just being giving pleasant association and emotional support, and being understanding when there's some anxieties, and helping sort out problems, these types of things. Some husbands and some wives, they're just not really capable of doing that. And what to speak of in the 7th canto, there's the description of the qualities of a qualified wife, which a lot of them revolve around looking after the husband, being nice to his family, and things of this sort. And the one particular verse which is fairly famous, the verse says, I think it's Narada Muni speaking, if I'm not mistaken, that in these ways, a chaste wife should faithfully serve a husband who is not fallen. Crucial point, who is not fallen. And then Prabhupada in the purport goes into describing, at least part of it is describing what is a fallen husband. I mean, you could say a fallen wife too. But otherwise, the one of the first points should be that when a man and a woman get together and become husband and wife, the expectations of each other should not be too high, that my husband is going to be like Lord Ram, and from the other side, my wife is going to be like Mother Sita, or Lakshmi, or Narayan, like that, because that's a formula for disappointment. But, as Prabhupada says, the wife, according to Vedic civilization, the wife is trained to be satisfied in all conditions. And we see actually, even to this day in India to some degree, at least amongst the older generations, that the wife sticks with the husband even when the husband is materially unsuccessful. Yeah, she doesn't just sort of spin off. and find a better candidate. And of course, classic example, which we just read of last year, I guess, or not long ago at all, was Devahuti, who was another daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, and who was married to Kardama, who was completely financially just impoverished. Of course, due to his mystical powers, he was able to manifest extreme opulence, but in the beginning and for a considerable period of time, Devahuti, the daughter of not just a king, not just, a sort of regular king, so to speak, but the daughter of the Manu, presiding deity of humankind, and with opulence of just unimaginable extent, she willingly and happily accepted this extreme poverty, literally living under a tree. Yeah, and so on like that. So anyway, as Prabhupada says, ideal husbands and ideal wives are in short supply in Kali Yuga, and Prabhupada says there just aren't. There are no ideal husbands and wives. And of course, amongst the people in general, Varna Sankara, the unwanted children, it's just incredible. The hellish types of children being produced. It's amazing. I remember when I was a teenager, my parents and so many others complained about the Beatles, and particularly the Rolling Stones, were much worse. But now they're like sort of pious religionists compared to some of these people now. I read a while ago about there's a particular culture or subculture in youth music where they sing the songs, I forget the name of it, the songs are all about killing people. Yeah, the songs are all about killing people. And there's a particular name, which I guess fortunately I forget. But it's just, this is straight from the hellish planets. These people are coming from the hellish planets and they're on their ways back. Prabhupada, I was told, one of numerous things I was told, which I never saw in writing, which supposedly Prabhupada said that from those days means, like the 60s and 70s, that those the youth entertainers, Prabhupada said, I was told, many of them had come from the hellish planets. And I don't know whether Prabhupada actually said it or not, but I would say that it was true, actually. And now I'm sure it's definitely true. There's just no doubt at all. Kali Yuga, and what that was 50 years ago. After another 50 years, I don't expect to be around in this body, but I wonder what it's going to be like. Yeah, okay. So, but still, the point here about being satisfied, even though your lot in life is not what you might have, I mean, in material terms, what you might have really wanted. You didn't get the husband you really wanted, although, he's a devotee, and you didn't get the wife that you wanted, or, she's a devotee, but that sort of thing. Unless the situation is quite extreme. I mean, if the situation is quite extreme, then it's certainly possible. And Prabhupada, not very happily, but he allowed divorce to happen under some circumstances. But otherwise, tolerance is such an important quality, to be able to become more tolerant than you were, than you are. Because in due course, we will all have to tolerate the time of death. First of all, old age, which is a bit of a run-up, but then death itself, that's really a very extreme experience generally. And you have to be able to tolerate it. And unless you practice, like our Krishna consciousness, unless you practice, you can't really expect just to be Krishna conscious. It takes practice. It takes time of practice and perseverance. And sometimes, if you don't get it together, give it another try, sort of thing. Yeah. So Prabhupada's talking about this. The wife is trained to be satisfied in all conditions, within reason. And the husband is required to please the wife. He has to try to look after her nicely, and not just in the same way that a man expects to be looked after in terms of food, ornaments, clothing. And then if all that goes on as nicely as possible, then good children can be born in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And Prabhupada was hopeful of that a generation of children would be born, like in our lifetimes, who would be able to take the lead of the Krishna consciousness movement and really take it forward. So anyway, in this case, you've got Yajna. You've got Yajna, the son, twin son, and Dakshina, the daughter. And they're just great personalities. Great personalities. And they produced 12 children who were also very great. Very great. As the chapter title says, Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu. Hare Krishna. Any comment or question, or should I not ask? Yes.
Did Srila Prabhupada say that the children being born in our movement in Krishna conscious families are actually coming from Vaikuntha?
From where?
Vaikuntha.
Not that I'm aware of.
Vaikuntha.
No. Because what?
I heard he said they're Vaikuntha children.
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean they came from, but they maybe, have that sort of character or be developing it. But, there was talk of children of our devotee couples from Prabhupada's time. There was talk of them being demigods. You heard that, right? Yeah. But demigods are sort of mixed devotees But at least they're devotees generally to some degree. But the idea, that some of the young ladies had, that my child is, almost like an avatar, or seriously, something like that, or at least a demigod or demigoddess, and, just super special amongst children. Well, I don't know. It seemed to me, not that I really observed that much, particularly in those days, but it seemed that they didn't, well, anyway, sometimes they didn't manage to carry on in Krishna consciousness after a while. So there may have been some, I'm just saying there may have been some sort of exaggerated idea in the minds of some of the parents about the qualifications of their children. But some of the children, of course now they're adults, and some of them are really good devotees. Yeah. Any other comment or question? Yes.
When Krishna comes as an avatar, then he will also come with all of his associates in different forms. So I was wondering then, when Krishna sends a Shaktivesh avatar like Srila Prabhupada, if his family members also are eternal associates.
Not necessarily. Yeah. Prabhupada describes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, even Advaita Acharya, he had 6 sons. 3 of them, particularly Achyutananda, became just great, great devotees. 3 became Mayavadis. And Prabhupada, his children, at least one who I never exactly met, but he came to Mayapur. I saw him and he spoke a bit and he looked like Prabhupada. Did you see him? He really looked like Prabhupada. He was not a practicing devotee, but as I understand, he was the best of the children of Prabhupada, and one, unfortunately, was basically a demon. Yeah, and he even said it himself, from what I heard. Yeah. Huh? Oh, yeah. He took ISKCON to court, saying that, Prabhupada's possessions, means the whole movement and the BBT, were by, normal rights of inheritance. It was all his. Yeah. And what a court case which went on for a long time. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I should have asked you if you had any words of wisdom. Disappearance, right.
I thought we could do something, because in the temple room, we won't be there because it's the public coming through for darshan.
Okay.
I was wondering, we could either do it in the morning, like we could either have a special class in the morning, or we
Yeah.
could do one in the evening and have Pushpa Puja with the evening class.
Oh, I see.
We could even do it here.
We could. Yeah,